And Sarah, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. So welcome everyone to today's Alive Academy. We are covering recovery and inclusion, why creating recovery-friendly volunteer programs benefits everyone. Today is August 7th, 2023, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This session is going to be about 60 minutes long. We're going to try to hold questions until the end. If you can't stay past the time, if you can't stay for the whole hour, that's okay. If you're an Alive member, we will be recording this and we will be uploading the presentation to our archive later on. We have two fantastic facilitators today that I will introduce you to momentarily, but let's first jump into today's agenda. We're going to do a little bit of housekeeping. We'll go through the introductions, and then of course we're all here for the presentation. And stay tuned afterwards. We will talk a little bit about next month's session, and again, we'll talk a little bit more about some announcements coming for Alive. All right, so moving into housekeeping, I'll keep this brief. You all do have your lines muted. Please use the chat or Q&A section for any questions or comments. On the chat, there is an icon where you can select if you want to send it to just the presenters or if you'd like to send it to everyone. We certainly encourage you to keep the conversation going, talk to everyone, make sure that you're putting it in so that everyone can see your chat. We'll certainly be monitoring that as well. If you have any tech issues, we recommend that you do video through the computer and then call in and use audio perhaps on your phone. If you're still having bandwidth issues or tech issues, go ahead and go into the chat and click on hosts and panelists so Gretchen can help assist from there. With that said, I'm going to now introduce our two facilitators for today's session. And I am so excited to introduce them, especially Adrienne, who's also been a guest speaker on our Alive CVA study group. She's a fellow animal welfare fan, so I'm just so much of a fan of hers. But I could not be more pleased to introduce Adrienne Yo and Jacqueline Wilmot. I'll start with Adrienne. She has been in the volunteer engagement field since 2015. She's worked with organizations supporting homeless individuals, animal welfare, community organizing. She worked with Jacqueline at the Phoenix, serving on the volunteer operations team. She identifies as an ally to people in recovery and those seeking recovery. Adrienne is a Jewish educator at Har Sinai Oheb Shalom congregation, and she lives in Baltimore, my stomping grounds, with her rescue pets. And Jacqueline Wilmot enjoys building volunteer strategies to amplify meaningful impact. She's a Colorado native who got her start with state and local organizations. Most recently, she's helped to develop and design to scale volunteer solutions for a national and international reach. In 2022, Jacqueline became certified in volunteer administration, woot woot, fellow CVA there. And she currently works with Adrienne Yo to co-lead volunteer operations at the Phoenix, where they bring volunteer experience to mobile. Jacqueline enjoys sober, active fun, music, and spending time with her teenage daughters. So with that said, I will now turn it over to Adrienne and Jacqueline. We'll get started with the presentation.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sarah. And thanks so much for having us here today. We're super excited. I'm a little nervous, but I think that as we get going, I'll realize that I really love this topic. So hopefully that will come more through than my nerves. So thanks again for coming to this Alive Academy on recovery and inclusion. You'll hear why and how to include volunteers in recovery from substance use disorder in your volunteer programs. The intro was so nicely done, so thank you very much about that. We can go to the next slide. Just a little bit more about me. You learned that I'm a Colorado native. I love the outdoors. And this picture is with me at the Delicate Arch in Moab, and I identify as a person in recovery. I did get my CVA last year, which was super challenging, but totally worth it. And I get to work with Adrienne at the Phoenix as the Director of Volunteer Operations. I'm going to just talk a little bit about the Phoenix since we'll use it in a lot of our examples today. So the Phoenix is a national nonprofit providing free programming, free sober activities from meditation to music, yoga, CrossFit. So Sarah, you might enjoy that aspect of it. Poetry, pickleball, and pretty much anything you can dream of. The only cost is 48 hours of sobriety. We have an empowered volunteer model, which means volunteers can really create and design what recovery looks like in their communities. And they're leading most of these efforts across the country. Volunteers are folks who are in recovery themselves and also allies. Our mission unites this group of staff, team members, volunteers who care really deeply about fueling a movement where together we can rise, recover, and live. So I have the special privilege of working side by side with Adrienne, although we're spread out from across the country. I'm in Colorado and she's in Maryland. I'll turn it over to Adrienne to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Adrienne, and thank you so much for the introduction, Sarah. I have a QR code up here on the Phoenix's logo. If you want to find our website or any of our socials, you can use that QR code. I am a lifelong East Coaster, and I have rescue pets who I'm hoping you will not see or hear in this presentation. They are locked out. I love mysteries, knitting, and strength training. And we can go to the next slide. We've got some tech instructions for you today. We're going to be using the reactions button on Zoom, and we'll also be using Mentimeter. To find reactions on Zoom, you'll go to the chat box, and then you'll select the 3 dots next to the kind of creepy smiley face. We will also go to Mentimeter, which is www.menti.com. Go to the next slide. All right, and before we get started, we just want to let you all know we want to save Q&A to the end of the session, but we do want to have a lively Q&A, so please note down one question that you have during this presentation for the Q&A. You can only see half my face. Oh. Go to the next slide. So today's topic is substance use disorder, how and why to include folks. And we'll talk about why volunteer engagement professionals in particular should make the deliberate effort to include individuals in recovery from substance use disorder. The way we set this up is the why, the how, the what. We'll also use the term SUD a lot, which means substance use disorder. It's an acronym. We can go to the next slide. And we wanted to get sort of a sense of where you all were in terms of experience, knowledge, feelings around substance use disorder. So we have the Mentimeter code that we're just going to use for a pulse check. When I see or hear the phrase substance use disorder, my first thought is, and there's no right or wrong answers.
Here we go. Here comes some responses.
Thanks, Kelsey. Can't get to Mentimeter, so she shared in the chat harm reduction, OUD. Great. And Gretchen, can we take it to the, oh, we still got responses coming in. Thank you all for sharing these. Some of the ones I see are ongoing struggle, illness, mental health, my friend, I think experience with addiction, help is needed. I also see mental health needs, peer recovery. This is great. Thank you, everyone, for sharing. And Gretchen, I think we can go to the next slide. We can actually stay on Mentimeter if you want. Yeah. The next question we have for you all is, when I hear or see the phrase recovery, the first thing that comes to mind is ongoing, journey, strength, continuous work, yeah, process, self-care, support, hope, relapse, better, worth it. Love that. Continuous work, new lease on life. Yeah, struggle, hard work, healing, Monica, thank you. Rebounding back up. I love that. Trying. Thank you, Shirley. All right. Thank you all for your responses. I think we'll go back to the presentation, and I appreciate you all. Oh, we got some more coming in. I appreciate you all sharing these. It's just kind of a pulse check for us. So thank you. And thank you all for your honesty and your vulnerability there. The reason why we're doing this presentation at Alive and not another nonprofit organization or coalition is that volunteering is so important. It's our society's connective tissue. It's the activity that brings together people across all the millions of divides, because we're all working together when we volunteer or when we engage our volunteers for a common goal. And that goal, no matter which nonprofit you're with, is serving others and creating stronger communities. But we also wanted to offer some background on substance use disorder, because there are so many myths and misconceptions and stigmas. Before we talk about inclusion, now we want you to have some understanding of how widespread it is and what substance use disorder is. The impact of substance use disorder is very significant. About 40 million Americans are currently living with substance use disorder, and that's about the same size as the population of California. The impact of substance use disorder can really vary for each individual and their family, but we do know that it can cause medical, psychiatric, psychological, spiritual, economic, familial, social, and legal problems for affected individuals, their families, and societies. And before we also dig deeper into what recovery is, we wanted to hear some guesses. What percentage of American adults identify as being in recovery from SUD? And you can give your answers in the chat. A lot of D's coming in. B. Gretchen, we can go to the next slide, give everyone the answer. Right, about 9% of adults, that's about 22.3 million people who are in recovery. Millions more people are family, friends, and allies to people in recovery. So that's about the size of the state of Florida. And substance use disorder can be classified as a disability in the United States. Is that a myth or a fact? We'll ask you to use those react buttons. Thumbs down for myth, thumbs up for fact. And if for some reason your reactions doesn't work, feel free to just write a myth or fact too in the chat. Seeing a lot of thumbs up. Thank you everyone for participating. Let's go to the next slide. So drug and alcohol addictions, also called substance use disorders, are considered disabilities under the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and then again under the Affordable Care Act. And we invite you to share on a more personal level, a thumbs up, if you or someone you love has been impacted by substance use disorder. You can also write thumbs up if your reactions are not working. Thank you everyone for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
Wow, so many people have been impacted. It's no wonder why you're here today, and why I'll go into a few more slides now around why including people in recovery in your volunteer programs and nonprofits is beneficial for all of us. But first, we have another question for you. If we took 1 million nonprofit organizations' vision statements and kind of mashed them all together and then zoomed out 10,000 feet, what would they say? What's kind of the gist? And feel free to put your answer in the chat. Ooh, make the world a better place, to help, supporting your community, help those in need, transformation, build community, help people, make an impact. Yes, absolutely. So almost every nonprofit organization or agency has the larger goal of creating a healthier, happier society. So you really nailed it. We all want our communities to be places where individuals can have their physical, social, emotional, environmental, artistic, and spiritual needs fulfilled. We took this 10,000-foot view in the why to begin the discussion of why including people in recovery in your volunteer program and your nonprofit at large will help everyone in your community get their needs better met. And in the next slide, let's start with the society as a whole. And we can go to the next slide. When individuals are experiencing substance use disorder, I say SUD, it can be tremendously impactful for themselves, their families, friends, and society as a whole. So for example, hospitals and emergency services face shortages of staff or beds with this epidemic. Courts may struggle to keep up with workloads of SUD-related arrests. We've definitely tried to incarcerate ourselves out of this problem. Families may experience financial or housing challenges when someone takes time from work to go to treatment or even has to leave their job because it may not be compatible to stay in that particular profession. Individuals may stop giving to local organizations because they need to pay for treatment or cut back on their hours. And let's not forget, SUD can be fatal. We've lost too many loved ones to alcoholism and overdose. The impact on society as a whole is substantial. And in the next slide, that impact is really hard to capture in a dollar amount. There are tangible and intangible costs and a variety of factors in putting a number on the epidemic. However, it's estimated that SUD costs $3.7 trillion each year in the United States. This includes everything from hospitalizations, healthcare costs, to incarceration. lost productivity, and time that family may have to take off to care for a loved one with SUD. The more that we can support people in recovery, the more resources we'll have to put into fitness, the arts, environment, animal welfare, etc. Next slide. So moving to inclusion benefits the organization, you can kind of see how this is heading. When we are openly friendly to people in recovery and have policies and procedures that are recovery friendly, we bring in new time and talent to the organization. And then when they come, people bring their friends and family too, who come with their own talents and traits. We have opportunities for workforce development, and some people in recovery aren't able to turn to old types of work because they've maybe lost professional licenses, the stress isn't conducive to recovery, or because the type of industry they're working in, like hospitality, for example, might not be a good match for recovery. Okay, next slide. So before we talk about this, this next topic that I have, just curious, does your organization have a diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility strategy or DEI strategy? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. Ooh, I'm seeing some thumbs up. Working on it, love it. Thumbs down, thumbs up. Great. So many of you answered thumbs up, which is great, and some no, and some are in progress. Next slide. So as organizations and agencies make DEI strategies, including individuals with substance use disorder is key. Most organizations are mandated to follow the ADA, but we can go beyond accommodations. That's what we believe. So accepting and embracing individuals in recovery from SUD. Being mindful of those in recovery might mean changing our language when referring to those who are struggling with substance use, the resources that are offered for folks, and how people are rewarded at the organization. I think back to my experiences working in nonprofits, and in every care committee, fun employee outing, or company celebration was usually always paired with alcohol. So I remember we had outings at breweries. We've had Rockies games with drink tickets. We even had Beer 30 Fridays where there was like a beer cart, or beer and wine was in the refrigerator. And there's designated times where everyone would kind of congregate around the fridge or the beer cart. We also had like champagne openly shared in the office to celebrate big wins. So as a person early in recovery, these were not safe situations for me. So when we become more intentional about the environment we're creating for folks, we can do a better job at creating a safe, supportive space that aligns with our commitment to inclusion. Next slide. So competition in nonprofit spaces is real. In a world full of choices for people to volunteer their time and talents, having a recovery-friendly organization can be another way to set your organization apart. Next slide. And this is probably my very favorite slide of the deck because it's kind of like, duh. Becoming recovery friendly will benefit those who are already a part of your organization. At the beginning of the presentation, we learned that 40 million Americans are living with SUD. And that's what was it? The answer was 9% of adults living in the US, which means if you have a staff of more than 10 people, chances are someone amongst that group is living with substance use disorder. And now consider your clients, your donors, your supporters, and guaranteed with that many people, you have people in recovery living with substance use disorder and allies. So think of the people that are already at your organization, and being more inclusive will deepen their engagement and chance for staying. We can all win. Okay, next slide. Inclusion, we know that addiction is a disease that comes along with shame and isolation. And so really um, the recovery from that requires connection and healing. When individuals in recovery are able to reconnect with peers to build healthy social networks, when we're able to access the kind of celebrations and fun outings, it brings us out of that shame and isolation into meaningful connection. And we're more likely to maintain our sobriety and have hope. Okay, next slide. So we've gone from society to the organization and down to the individuals. We focus on volunteering specifically because employment and volunteering can be pathways for recovery. The act of being employed or volunteering, being of service, offers people meaning, purpose, the opportunity to be a part of a team, to contribute to society as a whole. It can allow us to learn new skills, accomplish tasks, set goals, and reach them. So all of these things can help to sustain recovery. For those in recovery, volunteering can be a stepping stone into employment by offering them experience, skill building, opportunities, self-esteem, and references. I mentioned earlier in the prezzo that most people who volunteer with the Phoenix are in recovery. A lot of them are. Anyways, we've got a lot of allies and supporters as well. We do an annual survey of all of our volunteers and ask them about their experience. And with the responses from that survey, it reveals that volunteers at the Phoenix gain a better sense of connection, hope, personal meaning in life, and empowerment through their volunteer experience. So people move from a place of shame and isolation to really wearing a sober shirt like this and recovering out loud and proud. So what does that say for creating a happier, healthier society? It's pretty cool when we think about it. So I'll turn it over to Adrian, because we've talked a lot about, we've framed up kind of like why we care about this, right? Now let's talk about taking some action. So Adrian, you're up.
So I'm curious to know, do you believe that your organization is recovery friendly? Thumbs up or yes, thumbs down or no? I also, there should be like a side thumb for ish. Mostly, all right, I'm sure that's a great answer. All right, let's go to the next slide. We'll talk about some prep work. I think the first thing when we think about prep work, policies, practices, and background checks. And just to also frame this up, not everyone in recovery has a criminal background check. We know also that lacking a criminal background check does not mean that someone has never done something illegal or dangerous. Knowing this, we encourage you to examine policies around background checks that your organization holds for employees, volunteers, and clients. Rather than arbitrarily saying no one with a felony can volunteer, consider which charges would pose a risk to your clients and your organization. At the Phoenix, we consider crimes involving children, violence, or sexual offenses more egregious than DUIs and drug charges, even though they all might be classified as felonies. We consider a more holistic view of the individual to determine their readiness, like how much time has passed since the offense, what they've done to learn from the mistakes, and how they're able to foster a culture of healing. We recognize also that everybody makes mistakes, and that using a more holistic approach allows us to see the whole person. So if you are in a position of, influence around background checks, I encourage you to ask if there's a timeline that you'll consider rather than blanket yes or no policies. For instance, you'll welcome individuals with nonviolent felonies committed more than 5 years ago. At the Phoenix, we have volunteers and staff who have been justice involved, and having them on board makes our programs better and ultimately friendlier to team members that have had similar experiences. Go to the next slide. So let's talk about volunteer orientations and appreciations. I've worked for organizations that hold orientations and appreciation events in breweries. Where do you hold orientations? I'd love to see the answer in the chat. I know some organizations don't have the space for it. And if you do hold orientations outside of your buildings, do they always or often include alcohol? For appreciation events too, do you note that in the event description? If you have alcohol at volunteer appreciation events or orientations, offer an alternative so that people in recovery can choose to participate comfortably, and ensure that your calendar offers multiple opportunities for volunteers to be celebrated in alcohol-free settings. So go to the next slide. So community engagement and event strategies. Again, you may not be in a position to change this, but you may be in a position to help change this down the line or to offer input. Can someone engage with your organization in a space that doesn't involve alcohol? Do all of your young professionals programs center around alcohol, or your weekend or after work events? Lots of nonprofits are hosting events, appreciation dinners, and fundraisers in spaces with not just alcohol, but sometimes a lot of alcohol. And while breweries and wineries can be beautiful, they're not welcoming to everyone. Ideally, more organizations would do outreach at health fairs or sober living homes and treatment facilities. Even if you're saying, I'm in a museum, like, how am I gonna offer outreach to a recovery center, right? Offer free tickets or discounted tickets, botanical gardens, right? People in recovery deserve access to these beautiful spaces as well. Go to the next slide. And then fundraising events. So you all may not be in a place to make the decisions right now for fundraising events. You may be part of a team of decision makers. You may be in the future the person helping to make these decisions or leading these decisions. And we just wanted to acknowledge that, you know, you can't change everything about your organization's strategy right now. But one question about fundraisers: could someone attend or volunteer at a fundraiser for your organization that doesn't involve or center alcohol? And if the answer is no right now, are there shifts where people would at least be away from alcohol, like a setup shift, a check-in shift, a vendor assistant shift? A lot of nonprofits see alcohol as the key ingredient in their fundraising. I've worked at organizations that absolutely do and organizations that do not. And I think if your organization has to rely on people drinking and lowering their inhibitions to get donations, you may have an opportunity to rethink the strategy. Go to the next slide. And in terms of safety measures, answer in the chat if you know, do you have Narcan on site, and do you have staff and volunteers trained to use Narcan? Are staff and volunteers offered free or comped for first aid trainings, AED trainings, and Narcan? Treat having Narcan on site the same way that you would having a first aid kit on site. Ideally, Narcan training should be as common sense and accessible as first aid training. Oh, Lillian, I love saying that. And Liz, I love seeing those yeses. That's awesome. And then we've got some additional prep work. So trauma-informed trainings for both staff and volunteers are really critical in creating recovery-friendly spaces, and they also will benefit your clients, your staff, and your volunteers who may be experiencing other challenges in their life. Some nonprofits have on-site staff that do these trainings, and some of you live in states where your health and human services agencies will do trainings themselves for nonprofits. If neither of these are the case for you, I encourage you to reach out to local mental health nonprofits or nonprofit coalitions and see if you can access some some trauma-informed training at perhaps a low cost or even free for your staff and volunteers. I've got an article in the resources what may help get you started. And in terms of recruitment and outreach, sometimes people in recovery, like everyone, want to try things with friends or with a group. Market a variety of different volunteer roles to your community, ones that can be done with varying commitments of time, skills, and also roles that can be done in pairs and groups. For people leaving treatment or people who haven't been as active in the community due to their addiction, having a variety of time commitments and roles and the ability to do service with a group can make the difference in terms of getting them in the door. We also encourage you to reach out to local recovery groups, sober living homes, to market volunteer opportunities. All right, and now I'm going to pass it over to Jack.
Yes, amazing. I love all these great ideas, Adrienne. And I have some more as well in terms of how you can get started to develop a more recovery-friendly volunteer strategy. I'm kind of blown away with all of the thumbs up with questions around a recovery-friendly environment that you already have and some of the efforts that you already have in place. So I feel like this group is really ahead of the curve, which is amazing. And hopefully you can take one more thing away from this discussion today to add to the things that you're already doing. Another idea is to become an ally. If you're not already that, start calling yourself that, and start by taking it upon yourself to learn more about substance use disorder. We're going to be sharing out this resource document after this that lists out all of the places where we're citing our data and some just really great places to find some information. Google is a great place to start as well. And this group in particular, there's a lot of people that did say thumbs up to certain strategies that they already have in place. So even just amongst this group to share kind of knowledge, share what you're doing and learning from one another. You could, of course, join a Phoenix event. I personally think they're a lot of fun. Even though I've worked for the Phoenix for the last couple of years, I still attend the events because I enjoy them. And the only cost is 48 hours of sobriety. So even if you're not in recovery, you're totally welcome. And this is how you can show your support and become an ally. I remember when I first started at the Phoenix, and my mom and brother-in-law kind of had an interest in wanting to join me, but felt like they maybe didn't belong, or they were like taking up a seat because they are not, don't identify as people in recovery. And I reassured them that they very much are a part of this movement. They are a part of this community. And if you think about like really great movements, like, because I would say that this is a recovery movement, think about the Black Lives Matter movement, another incredible movement that's made stronger with allies who speak up about the rights of Black lives, right? It takes the whole community to really be in solidarity for a movement to take shape. So you very much, if you want to become an ally, you can. So that's one idea. Another is to be aware of your language and leave behind stigmatizing words and phrases. And in the next slide, here's some tips on some words to use and words to avoid. So the key is to use person-first language, focus on recovery, not what the person is recovering from. Words to avoid are addict, alcoholic, junkie, drug problem, dirty, clean. Words to use: person in recovery, substance use disorder. You could say person living with substance use disorder, testing positive, testing negative, drug or alcohol misuse, sober or sobriety. I find the words to use tend to be a little bit more accurate in like describing what we're actually talking about anyways. But these are, when we use these words on the right, it really kind of helps to break away from some of those stigmatizing words, even though they're fairly commonly used for people who are in recovery themselves. They may refer to themselves as an addict or an alcoholic, but we can make the choice on the words that we want to use, because words do matter. And when we're really intentional about the language that we use, we can reduce stigma and show that we care and are modeling the safe and supportive culture that we want to create. Okay, next slide. Recovery groups exist everywhere, and working with recovery groups can be your secret weapon. Before coming into recovery myself, I was not aware of how many people who are impacted by substance use disorder are already in like service positions, especially with the anonymity of Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, and like groups like that. They're anonymous. So there's a lot of volunteering and service work being done totally below the scenes. This was news to me. But a lot of these recovery groups are available to tap into as well. So most recovery communities and sober living communities prioritize service. There's millions of 12-step members that volunteer each year, and there are open meetings. So if you do not identify as a person struggling with substance use disorder, but you wish to check out a meeting or get introduced to the community, you totally can. You can go to what's called an open meeting. So you can simply Google AA open meetings and find meetings in your community. And another tip for getting started is talking about substance use disorder openly. So many people have a connection to SUD. I mean, there are lots of people just in this small group that are directly impacted by substance use disorder. So if you care about it, talk about it. And even start by talking about attending this session today. Maybe we'll open up a conversation. You never know who might come out of the woodwork and are going to be there to support you. At the Phoenix, Adrienne shared her interest as an ally and ended up partnering with HR and creating a whole employee resource group for allies. So good job, Adrienne. And you can do something like that too. Find those with lived experience, wanting to share their stories, gather data about how recovery-friendly policies can positively impact people in your community. SAMHSA is another great resource. We'll have it in our resource guide. And then you can identify some potential partners, like a group from an Oxford House, for example, which is a sober living community that want to do service with your organization. And the next slide is about creating some buy-in from leadership. You might feel, we've expressed a lot of different ideas today, and you may feel like you don't have direct control over these strategies or these functions, but you can start by making a pitch to leadership and earning their support. So present a case with your allies and people involved in your organization who have lived experience in recovery or as an impacted person. You can pull in some of the data that we've shared from this presentation, and if it was me, I would get to know like what's going to be the most successful approach with this leader, and I kind of shape my pitch based on that. So use a little bit of data and start with some low-hanging fruit, like having a substance-free celebration for volunteers. Ask them to do the same with employee celebrations, and don't be afraid to go big. Okay, so we're wrapping up here, and we have hopefully shared a little bit of context and why there's a challenge, why we care about this so deeply, and what the heck we can personally do about it as volunteer engagement professionals or other titles we might have for our volunteer strategies. So now my question to you is, what is the one thing that you might have learned from today that you are prepared or inspired to do moving forward? And you can add those to the chat, or you can come off mute if you'd like. Elizabeth says, get trauma-informed training. Leave this into discussions with clients. Absolutely. Examine criminal reference, share resources with staff. Going back to Jennifer's, examine criminal reference checkpoints. I like that. Rethink background screening criteria. That's something that's taken shape for us at the Phoenix over the last 2 years. We've kind of, molded it to really find that critical point of what is our risk threshold. What do people need to show to determine their readiness to volunteer? How can we take a more holistic approach? Totally. Approach recovery groups to partner with for volunteer opportunities. Ooh, I love that. Amazing. Well, it sounds like this group already has some really great progress, or really amazing stuff that you're up to in your volunteer programs. And hopefully you're leaving today with just one more idea to add to it. You've always, got to start somewhere, right? So I really like these ideas that are being shared. So now we want to kind of open it up to some Q&A. We may have a few more slides to show as well that kind of list out our resources. So here are resources that will be available to you after this presentation. And yeah, we'd like to just open it up with some Q&A, and feel free to add a comment too if you don't have a question but would like to comment on something. Totally open.
So we did have one question come in through the Q&A, and it says, I work at a zoo and we sell alcohol on site. We recently hosted a group from a residential recovery program for our volunteer project. Does selling alcohol on site make our organization an unwelcoming or unsafe volunteer location for individuals in recovery?
That's a great question. I think that it could. I think that for folks who are early in recovery, having alcohol present physically might be unsafe for them. I think the first starting point might just be letting them know that it is on site, and let them kind of make the decision if they want to go through with the volunteer service project or not. And sometimes just having the heads up and doing a little bit of safety planning around that can be perfectly fine. But without the heads up and knowing about it, it could potentially be an unsafe situation for folks, especially early in recovery. That can be a really critical time for relapse.
I also wanted to say, if obviously you can't change what's sold on site, but if you may even want to take something off site, or if you have offices in a different area where they could make enrichment toys, maybe that could be another alternative way to engage them.
There's another question from earlier that may have answered during the discussion or chat. Is it best practice for organizations to list specifics of what charges would exclude someone from volunteering?
I think that it's always a good idea to check in with your legal counsel. And whatever kind of policy or requirements or standard operating procedure that you're promising, once you explicitly state it in a form that is visible to the public, you've got to adhere to it. And so for us, we keep it a little bit more basic because there's a lot of considerations that we make for every situation. No two situations are identical. And so we have a background check. We talk about that being a part of our onboarding process. That's what people can expect, is that every staff and volunteer who comes to the Phoenix will have a background check performed. It's free of charge. Here's why we do it in the first place. So we talk about kind of like the why. And then we talk about looking for things that are violent, a sexual crime, or violence, sexual offenses, and
children related is
and crimes involving children tend to be the most problematic charges for us, and anything really recent, because if it's recent, what we're looking for is a person who can make good sound judgment stepping into a volunteer position, and recency indicates they may have made a potentially made a decision just recently that might not be a great one. So we take all of these things into consideration before making a decision. So we have a lot of words, and it goes something like that, versus here's exactly what charges will be acceptable or not acceptable, because it really does depend. There's certain charges that we see, but if they happened 25 years ago, it's looked at a little differently than if it happened just 6 months ago. So I would say check with your legal counsel. I think it's totally fair for all parties to know kind of like what in general you're looking for and what they can expect. I would then avoid adding all of the nitty-gritty details unless you're prepared to follow it 100% of the time. Otherwise, you'll have some liability on your hands.
There's, Sarah, do you have that one? Go ahead.
Yeah, so we had another question come in, and it says, what opportunities are there to partner with the Phoenix? Whether that's encouraging our volunteers to attend existing events or classes, or seeing if the Phoenix could host an activity specifically for our volunteers.
Ooh, yes, absolutely. I mean, we definitely have all kinds of, like, events are what we do. So we have events and activities online and in person every day and throughout the country, a little bit internationally. And so anyone could come and check it out for sure. But we could also do something and, host something at your organization. I think that if Adrian and I put our heads together with you, we could come up with something creative and cool and impactful. But I think like a great way to experience what this is like is to actually experience it. And we can do something like anything from like a 10-minute meditation to yoga to group fitness. We could do something online. So lots of different kinds of opportunities. Adrian, what do you think about that?
Well, I know it's right around the corner, but September is National Recovery Month. So if you're looking for a reason to do something, we're partnering with an organization called Mobilize Recovery to do a lot of different Phoenix Mobilize third-party events that really get people to do service is the goal, whether it's a community cleanup or packing backpacks for kids going back to school. Jacqueline and I would love to, stay in touch and partner with you all. Our emails are on the resource list.
A question. This is Gretchen. Just like in the LGBTQ plus community, the rainbow is kind of, the acceptable symbol. And I was reading the Engage article about involving that community in volunteer programs, and they suggested putting that graphic on your website. So is there something for people with SUD or recovery friendly? Is there like a logo or a color or just that phrase recovery friendly? Do you know of any, or do you have suggestions?
Ooh, that's a good one, Gretchen. We don't, not that I know of. I don't know of any like flag or brand But even just the words, recovery friendly, I think could be really cool and express to people that you are recovery friendly, and it may just start a conversation, just to kind of, I don't know, to have people ask what that means, or an opportunity to describe it a little bit further.
We also had one other question come in, and it says, what additional policies aside from background checks should we check in our programs to ensure being recovery friendly?
There is an article that I believe I put on the resources list about making it a recovery friendly workplace. I think if you just about how to make an organization a recovery friendly workplace, if you just start with volunteers and you miss the staff, it may be really hard to implement new programs and policies. So I would recommend starting there and working with your HR so that then you can start with staff and then have it filter out to volunteers. But I think Jacqueline might have some different answers too.
Yeah, that's a good question. It might be like, I don't know that we have that many policies, but we do have some like best practices when it comes to, or practices that we use, like, when someone is expressing, that they are in recovery and do need some kinds of support. So like during our onboarding of volunteers, we're very intentional about asking some questions and leaving some room for folks to tell us what they might need from us to support them for exactly where they're at, and help us kind of like also move them along. What are your goals? What are your hopes and dreams, and what are the ways that we might be able to support you? But we're really intentional about building that into our onboarding design, so that question is asked 100% of the time to each person who walks through the door. Because I feel like if we're not really intentional about asking that question, we might never know. We might never find out. The person might never feel there's like a space to describe or disclose what they might need in terms of support. So in onboarding, that's definitely something to include. Another is relapse. So we've had volunteers and staff relapse at the Phoenix. And so first, it's not a policy, but it is a practice that we have to be very supportive when someone is using drugs or alcohol, and asking them about the support that they might need. In this kind of example, it might mean that the person needs some resources and some time to get back back on board and back into their volunteering responsibilities and all of that. And for us to be like super supportive and open-minded about that. I feel like I had some other ideas, but Adrienne, can you think of anything else?
I think when somebody does disclose a relapse, I'm really careful, even though I've been involved in 12-step programs, not to mean like you have to go back to the beginning. Like I say, wow, like someone says they've been on a journey towards sobriety, but they relapsed a year ago. I say like, wow, you have 20 years on this sober journey, to really validate all of their experience. There's a phrase like recovery capital. And so helping to connect people in recovery to others helps them build social relationships, which is part of what helps sustain that recovery. So yeah, open-ended support questions, like Sarah Philippi had suggested, to ask people what they need for their own health.
Thank you both so much for taking the time today. I think this was such an incredible session. I think that the topic and even what you shared, I know I took several things away, especially about just language and how I go about speaking. to those with SUD. And so I just want to thank both again, Adrian and Jacqueline, for facilitating today. I'd like to thank Gretchen for being our Zoom wizard of all things amazing. And just really quick, I know we're at past the hour. I wanted to give a shout out for our next month's call, which is on Wednesday, September 20th. And it is around recruitment isn't the answer. And it's presented by Rob Jackson. And then last but not least, of course, if you are not a member of Alive and you would like to join, we certainly encourage you to join for amazing materials just as this, supporting and of course contacts, and really just the networking and the collaboration you get from one another with being a part of such an incredible group. I would also just like to give a little plug. If you are a member of Alive, volunteer with us and get to do things like I'm doing right now, and get to learn so many incredible things to continue your professional growth and to assist and support your agencies. You all do incredible work. So that is our information. And with that, I just wanted to say thank you again to our presenters. Thank you again for you all joining us today. I know we ran a little bit long and I do apologize for that, but I think it was well worth it given every question we had, and we got through all of the material. So thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your week, and I will turn it over to Gretchen.
Thank you, everyone. And we will have this posted on our website as well as on the members only side in a day or two. You'll get a follow-up email with a little bit more information. Thank you. And again, Adrian and Jacqueline, thank you for the work that you do with the Phoenix. Have a great week, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.